Yo, what is up, guys, and welcome to the very first episode of the Toque de Fútbol podcast with your host, me, Jorge. Now, before we get into it, of course, I want to give you guys all a background of who I am and why I started this podcast to begin with. I am a 27-year-old young man who has always wanted to do something with his life that has to do with my passions in life. Of course, I have a 9 to 5 right now, like most people do, but I've always wanted to create something where I could go back and say that I left something behind regarding my passions and doing something that's actually fulfilling to my life and brings me actual happiness. So, I've done content creation before. I dabbled with Twitch a couple years ago, but I quickly realized that gaming is just not my passion. I loved gaming with my friends, but I'm just not a great gamer, and I'm just not a gamer in general. So I kind of fell off on the Twitch streaming, but what I loved about Twitch streaming was I was able to build a good community, a solid community that would come back and watch me and support me, even when I wasn't even the best player or even remotely close to being a somewhat decent player. Over the past few years, I've decided to try a lot of different things and have a lot of different people in my life. I have business owners on one side. I have people that have 9 to 5s. I have personal trainers, people that are doing what they love to do. And I think that inspires me the most is I want to create something that I love, that I really love and I feel really passionate about. And I think the past few years, I think I've always known it, but it took me a long time to actually realize what I can do with it. My passion has always been sports, specifically soccer. I grew up playing soccer my whole life, pretty much from what I started off with watching Liga MX, or back then it was like BBVA Liga MX, but now it's just Liga MX. And then I transitioned into European football. So I think I've been watching European football for maybe the last 18 years of my life. And I'm 27, so pretty much my whole life, yeah, from what I can remember. So yeah, I decided to, start a podcast, and what I want to get out of this podcast is I want to, most importantly for me, I have 3 rules in mind, and if these 3 rules or goals hit, then I'm good. Number 1 is consistency. I want to be consistent, posting podcasts every week for you guys. Number 2 is growth. I just want to see growth in my channel, in my other social media platforms that I'll be posting. I'll be posting on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram mainly, and of course YouTube's going to be my main platform. And then number 3, I think number 3 is the most important for me, is just improvement in general. I just want to see improvement in my creations, my content creation, and improvement in my podcasting. Most importantly, I want to build a community with you guys. I want to converse with you guys in the comments. If you guys have questions for me, go ahead and shoot them in Instagram DMs, TikTok DMs, whatever. I'm not too familiar with TikTok because I'm just barely starting off on TikTok, but Instagram is definitely fair play. And of course, leave anything in the comments that you guys want me to talk about, or you guys want to give me any insights on what I've talked about in the podcast. That would be completely great. That's honestly what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for a community where I could express myself freely, give my opinions and expertise on games and football in general. Like I said, this is something that I'm doing because I really love to do it. And I love to talk about soccer, and I do it all the time in my friends group chat. And they always tell me, like, man, you should start a podcast. You're a really great talker, and you really know a lot about soccer. It just took me a long time to really see a clear vision of what I wanted to do, and this is what I want to do. And like I said, as long as I'm hitting those 3 points that I mentioned earlier, right now I just want to put out content and talk to you guys about football. So that's a little bit about me, a little bit about the podcast. Toque de Fútbol podcast will be a podcast where we just talk about soccer. We'll do analysis, pre-game analysis, post-match analysis on the biggest games in Europe or just the biggest game in world football. We'll talk about news in world football and pretty much all things football. Anything related to soccer and that I find very interesting, I'll put on a podcast. Of course, I'm willing to take topics from you guys, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you guys have to say in the comments. So don't be shy, boys and girls, of course. Go ahead and leave those comments down there so we can get talking. Well, I think that'll be it for this introduction. So without further ado, let's get episode 1 rolling. we got the UCL quarterfinals preview coming up. Let's get it. First game we got up in hand is Bayern versus Inter Milan. Now, when I first saw this draw, or this clash come up, because we have bracket styles now, in recent histories, you would think that Bayern would dominate this game easily, but Bayern's not the same team that they used to be 5-10 years ago, and Inter Milan is not the same team that they used to be 5-10 years ago. People probably forget, but Inter was in the final last season. They made the final last season against Man City. Sorry, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. And they're a really well-rounded team, so, when I saw this draw, I knew people were going to go ahead and say that Bayern was going to be the favorite, and totally warranted, but I think this tie will be a little different, and it just won't have that Bayern dominance like we're used to. Bayern are coming off a win in the Bundesliga, 3-1 victory against Augsburg, and they're current leaders in the Bundesliga. I believe they're up 9 points right now, but 6 points ahead of Bayer Leverkusen, with both teams playing the same amount of matches. So they are leading the league right now, and they've been in better form than they were earlier this season, I would say. Inter, on the other side, they did blow a 2-0 lead in their most recent league game against Parma. They ended up in a 2-2 tie, and they're still in first place, but they're only 4 points ahead of second place, and Napoli still has to play their game this weekend. So we'll see how that pans out. By the time this video is out, Napoli would have already played their game, so we'll see if they end up being 4 or just 1 point ahead. With Napoli, I would say most likely they're going to win, and they'll probably be leading Serie A, Inter, of course, by 1 point. In terms of this game, just in general, I think Bayern has a lot to worry about because they have a lot of injuries. We saw Alphonso Davies got injured in the Canada versus USA game. Something that Bayern was not very happy about. They actually threatened to sue the Canadian Football Federation, because they thought that Alphonso Davies shouldn't have been in a game with no football significance. Of course, I think that's totally warranted for Bayern, but in Canada's defense, this was their first. They're preparing for a World Cup, so they really need to put their best players out there so they can gain the chemistry. And of course, anytime you have a chance to beat one of your rivals, USA, then obviously you're going to field the best player, especially in a tournament that's recognized by FIFA. Although a lot of people will say it's a glorified friendly, yes, CONCACAF Nations League is not the highest level of play in terms of competition, but at the end of the day, it's still a tournament that counts. And I know Canada has been on a very historic run recently, so I can see why they were still playing. Nonetheless, I regress on the Alphonso Davies. He's out for the season, of course. And now they're missing Musiala as well, one of their better young players. I think, in my opinion, their best young player they have. He's out for 6 to 8 weeks with a muscle injury that he picked up on Friday's win against Augsburg. So Bayern has some concerns there. They do have some concerns, and I think their defensive line is also a cause for concern just in general. But what Bayern do have is company loves his team rotation, and they do have a lot of squad depth. So it's possible they could replace Musiala, and they won't be missing him as much. Same with Alphonso Davies, they won't miss him as much. But as I said before, I don't think their defensive line is the best. Upamecano and Kim in the back are very susceptible to mistakes. So they're really going to have to clean up their act if they want to be able to hold a defensive line, especially against two great goal scorers in Thurman and Lautaro Martinez for Inter Milan. So I think Bayern really has to do a solid job in the back. I think that is their weakest point on their squad, and they should really look to refresh the midfield and the attack, especially with Musiala out. They have a lot of different guys on the wings that can bring a lot of pace. Guys like Gnabry, Sané, and Coleman. They can all cause trouble to Inter's backline. And of course, they're all going to be looking to get the ball somehow to their best player on the team, Harry Kane on top. Harry Kane, who is tied for second in UCL scoring with 10 goals, tied with Guirassy from Borussia Dortmund, and of course just 1 goal behind the leading goal scorer, who is surprisingly, for a lot of people, Rafinha from Barcelona. Surprisingly even to me, a Barcelona fan. Inter and Bayern have a history of 9 matches in the UCL, in European competitions, and Bayern leads that series with 5 wins. Inter has 3 wins and then 1 draw, of course. Excuse me. But most notably, for all my football fans, if you guys follow football or have been following football, Inter have probably the biggest victory in the past 15 years, which was their 2-0 win in the UCL 2010 final. So I know a lot of Bayern diehards will remember that game, and they'll want some revenge here in this quarterfinals, of course, against Inter. I mean, that final was 15 years removed, but still, to Inter, that is their biggest win so far against Bayern, and to Bayern, that is their biggest loss to Inter. So, with that, there's some historical background between these two clubs, of course, in European competitions. So, that'll bring a little bit more hostility and passion to the fans, especially, but also the players who want to, rewrite history one way or another for Inter or for Bayern Munich, of course. My thoughts on this game, my predictions is that I think Bayern have a lot of issues, especially with the injuries piling up. Like I mentioned before, I think they have a lot of defensive issues. I don't think their center backs are center backs that I would be very secure playing in the back. Like I said, they're very susceptible to mistakes, especially Upamecano. But Inter on the other side, they also have a lot of distractions. They're still in the Coppa d'Italia. They're only 4 or 1 point away ahead of Napoli, depending on the result of Napoli's game this weekend. And, of course, they're going to have their eyes set on UCL glory after 2 years being removed from the final. So it's possible that could cause a lot of distraction and not allow them to focus fully on Bayern. But I still think this is going to be a very close tie, and Bayern's still going to be favorited. I think they're favorited in the sports books, of course, still. Mainly because of their current form in domestic league and their squad depth in general. They do have a lot of players that they can rotate in there, even with the losses of Alphonso Davies and Musiala that I mentioned earlier. And of course, Bayern start off with home field advantage in leg 1. So I think over the course of 2 games, Bayern do have the advantage here. I want to say that I think Inter is going to win. That Inter's going to come out on top here. And that's going to be my prediction. But if we're going by stats, sports books, expert analysis, which I'm not, of course, but we're going to get there soon. People will say that Bayern is favorite, but I think you can't overlook Inter's great season, and they're still a really solid squad. They have a really solid back line, and they've only allowed 30 goals in the Serie A, which is tied for 4th least amount of goals in that league. So you really can't overlook Inter, and I'm going to go ahead and take Inter, but Bayern will still be favorited, and I'm sure a lot of people will pick Bayern. But my prediction, Inter goes through after 2 games. I think the first leg will be very close, and I think Bayern will most likely win the first leg, but only by a minimum margin, by 1 goal. I'm not going to say it's a 1-0 game, maybe a 2-1, even a 3-2. But they should get the win playing at the Allianz Arena in front of their home crowd. But I think overall, after the 2 games, Inter will progress to the semifinals of the Champions League. Now, one of the most intriguing matchups for me, and probably for all world football, is the Arsenal-Madrid game. One of the toughest games to call, probably in terms of both teams being very powerful teams in their leagues. Arsenal sitting in 2nd place in the Premier League. Real Madrid sitting in 2nd place in La Ligue, of course. I'm sure a lot of people will say that Madrid is just a historically better team, which they are. And Arsenal really hasn't accomplished much since Arteta came here. A lot of people will say that their best accomplishment is getting 2nd in the league, chasing for that league title. But at the end of the day, you can't overlook Arsenal. They've been solid, and they've really come a long way from their 4th place finishes in the league all the time. They've at least been battling there, and they've looked solid with Arteta. It's been 6 seasons, no titles yet, besides an FA Cup here and there. But Arsenal, there's still someone you can't overlook at the end of the day. Madrid's coming off a 2-1 loss to Valencia. honestly a historic victory for Valencia, a historic falter for Real Madrid on their side. The defense struggled mightily in both goals. They got caught in the counterattack on the second goal really badly. And then, losing to a team like Valencia, who is in relegation zone right now, battling for relegation, a team that hadn't won away from home since April 15th of last year, it was a pretty tough loss for Real Madrid. Now they're sitting 4 points behind Barcelona after their loss, and of course after Barca tied to Betis. So they lucked out there, but just not a great performance by Real Madrid. I know they didn't have their starting goalkeeper or their backup. They had to call up someone from the Castilla making his debut, but you really can't pinpoint this on the goalkeeper. For me, it was just defensive mistakes. I watched the game, and I was shocked to see Valencia scoring the game winner in the 93rd minute, but happy as well as a Barcelona fan, of course. So now Madrid's going to have to do a quick turnaround in terms of morale and prepare for Arsenal. They really can't keep that game in their heads, and they have to put it behind them because Arsenal is a much stronger side than Valencia, and they're going to need to be at their best. Now, on the other side, Arsenal is coming off a tie against Everton, another team that has not been great in the Prem. It's not been great in the past 2 seasons in the Prem or any competition. So I think Arsenal has to feel unlucky after this game, though. I did watch this game as well. I think they dominated most of the game, and they probably should have won the game if it wasn't for a penalty kick that was awarded by VAR after reviewing VAR. To me, it wasn't the clearest of penalties, but we got technology now, so video assistant referee, they thought that it was enough for a penalty, and they awarded Everton a penalty in the second half, and that was that. Game ended in a 1-1 draw, but I still think Arsenal should be confident heading into this tie, considering they did thump PSV in the round of 16. Their greatest win in terms of margins in UCL history for Arsenal, and probably just in UCL history in general. Of course, PSV is not Real Madrid. Real Madrid is not PSV. We know what Real Madrid is, and we know what PSV is and was. But nonetheless, Arsenal should not baby or cower to Real Madrid's mightiness, because I think Arsenal stands a chance here. In terms of how this game's going to play out, how the teams are going to come out, I think that Madrid's got to solidify their defense. I honestly really dislike Lucas Vazquez as a fullback. I don't understand why he's still playing fullback for Real Madrid. I understand they're injured in the back as well. They got Militao and Mendy out, who are probably starters there. But Lucas Vazquez has been terrible for me all season. He's just not a defender. He just is always cut out of position. He's always out of position, and he's always causing some sort of trouble in the back. Now their center backs are solid. Rudiger I like, and Asensio has really come on for Real Madrid this season, something that they really needed considering all their defensive injuries in the back. Even guys like Alaba coming back, he scored 2 own goals in last week's game, so I don't think he'll be getting a nod here. So yeah, for me, Real Madrid really have to solidify the defense in the back, and we all know what they can do up front. So as long as they keep the defense solid, and yes, they're gonna have to stay focused in the back, especially their wing backs, who I think are the weakest link in the defense. Now, on the Arsenal side, Arteta has really been stressing focus as well for Arsenal, and them being able to leverage home field advantage in the first leg. He's talked about perfection in both games, something that I don't think Arsenal have, unfortunately. To me, Arsenal, the biggest problem to them in the Prem and not being able to win the Prem has been their inconsistency. They've had runs of great football, great runs, great victories, and then they had games where they, tie to Everton. They shouldn't be tying to Everton. There's times when they just look lackluster on the ball. It kind of looks like they don't care sometimes, and I think they've been really inconsistent. So asking for perfection in order to progress is a tough one for Arsenal. But nonetheless, for me, it's more about them focusing. If they can focus and play the football that they usually play, and that they're known to be playing, then they should have a chance here. But to ask for perfection, it all starts with focus, first of all. So yeah, they'll have to be very focused. They'll have to find a way to contain Mbappe, who's been on an absolutely amazing streak for Real Madrid in terms of goal scoring and creation. Of course, we know how fast and pacey he is on the wing. The defense really has to, again, going back to the focus, they have to be very focused to not lunge at Mbappe, cause any penalties, any fouls near the box that can lead to direct free kicks or even indirect free kicks, to look for headers with guys like Rudiger on the other side. So yeah, they're going to really have to game plan against Mbappe, and even guys like Vinicius Jr. I know Vinicius Jr. has not been in top form recently, but he's still pacey on the wing and he can still create. Even guys like Rodrigo, they're going to have to find a way to game plan around those guys mainly for me. The most important player for me for Arsenal in terms of this tie will be Martin Odegaard, of course. I think that Odegaard is the most important player for Arsenal in general. He is the creative mind in the midfield, especially now with having no actual number 9, no striker, no natural striker. They're playing a guy that used to play like center mid there. I know he's scoring, but he's been scoring in the Prem. This is not the Prem, and these are not Prem defenses. This is a completely different backdrop, and it's Real Madrid, the kings of the UCL. So we can't really expect their striker to score and carry the load here. I think for me, it's going to be more on Martin Odegaard being able to spark magic in the midfield, finding some creative plays, and then the guy on the wing, Bukayo Saka, who just came back. I think he is Arsenal's best player. Very creative player, very pacey on the wing. He's going to have to find a way to maybe cut inside, shoot, get a goal in. You know, something that inspires the team, something that really gets Arsenal going. And I think that's going to be both Odegaard and Bukayo Saka. So if those guys are off their games, Arsenal is going to look bleak. They're going to look lost. And they're going to really rely on their defensive guy in the back, Saliba, to be able to somehow maintain guys like Vinicius and Mbappe. But it's all to be seen, of course. It's going to be a great matchup. These clubs have played each other 12 times, with Madrid completely almost owning this series with 8 victories and Arsenal only having 4. So no ties here. Maybe we'll get a tie this time around. Probably not. I think that Arsenal, as Arteta has stressed, they do need to be perfect. They can't have any defensive lapses in the game. And I think this game will come down to individual brilliance. Unfortunately for Arsenal, most of the individual stars or star power comes on the Madrid side. Guys like that I mentioned before, Mbappe, Vinny. I'll even drop names like Rodrigo. Bellingham, of course, is a great player. He hasn't had the season that he had last season, but he's still there and he still scores very important games, especially in crucial moments, which this tie will have a lot of. So, yeah, Arsenal really have to take advantage of their home field advantage in the first leg if they have any chance of progression here. Madrid's going to have to put La Liga behind them for now and focus on this competition, which is their competition, of course, being the highest winners in this competition, and we all know what they can do even with minimal time on the clock. So yeah, coming down to individual brilliance, it's going to be a great match against two historical teams. I simply just don't see Arsenal finding a way to knock out Real Madrid here. Man City, who I think is better than Arsenal, couldn't find a way to beat Madrid this season or even prior seasons when Man City was the top of the top football level. Arsenal is just not there. Madrid are veterans. They know how to get it done. Arsenal don't really know how to get it done in the UCL, at least not in recent history. Tough one for Arsenal. They really need a win at the Emirates this week. Without a win, it's over. Regardless, I'm going to go with Madrid over the 2 legs to progress to another semifinals. Something that really hurts me to say as a Barcelona fan, but not surprising, right? Especially as a Barcelona fan, I witnessed these guys firsthand every weekend when I watch La Liga games, and I always watch their games in Copa del Rey, UCL. Hate watching them, and they're still progressing. So, yeah, it is what it is as a Barca fan. But luckily, Barca's back on top too, so it doesn't hurt as much. Talking about Barca, Barcelona has a game against Borussia Dortmund, of course. Probably one of the games that a little easier to call, just in terms of, with all due respect to Borussia, on paper, statistically, Barca is the better team. And just like if you watch any games, Barca is the better team. All due respect to my Borussia Dortmund fans, I'm sorry. I love Borussia. I always supported them in the Bundesliga over Bayern Munich, but they're just not the Borussia they used to be 10 years ago with Marco Reus, guys like Gundogan, Lewandowski, of course. They're not that team. They haven't been since those guys left, so it's going to be a tough one. But Barcelona, they're coming off a 1-1 draw against Betis, and they're only 4 points ahead of Real Madrid, so it's still very close race for La Liga, of course. Barca had a chance to go up 6, but Betis had a great season so far, and man, Anthony has really changed the face of Betis. Don't let Anthony get any more chemistry and confidence with Betis, because Betis could be a side to look forward to next season if Anthony stays, of course. But Betis, they held Barca at home. So, yeah, Barcelona, regardless, I think they've been completely different and transformed under Flick this season. So they are unbeaten in 2025 since the calendar flipped. And they're looking for a treble this season. They're looking for a treble in the UCL, Copa del Rey final now, and, of course, a league title. So, yeah, Barcelona is on another level right now. Borussia Dortmund on another level, but on the bad end. They do come into this game with a 4-1 victory against Freiburg, but they're sitting in a disappointing 8th place in the Bundesliga, something that you don't normally see with Borussia Dortmund. They're usually always at least top 4, if not top 3, if not even top 2 in recent history. But yeah, it just seems like they're out of the loop, out of the greatness in the Bundesliga now. Their place has been overtaken by Bayer Leverkusen, and there's been a lot of teams that have come around in the Bundesliga that have kind of just been battling for like top 4 supremacy in the Bundesliga. We had teams like RB Leipzig, who had really great seasons a couple seasons ago. We had teams like even Union Berlin, who somehow made the Champions League off the Bundesliga. But you would always see Borussia there. And now they either have to win the Champions League or find a way to climb back into 4th place. Something that will be very, very difficult, considering they are only 5 points away from UCL qualification spot. So not too bad, but still, they just have not been in great form. So it's going to be tough for them. But at least they're coming in with a win. So they're feeling confident, and they will be playing at home. So they're really going to have to draw that passion and inspiration from their home fans. The yellow wall is going to have to really, really inspire them here. They're going to have to maintain balance in defense and find ways to try to shut down Barca's attacking trio. We all know that attacking trio is no joke for Barcelona. And they're going to have to find ways to get the ball to the UCL second top goal scorer in Guirassy. I think that's the only way Borussia has any chance in this game. They're going to have to find brilliance with Guirassy and somehow try to level Barca's attack, even just like hold them maybe to 1 goal if possible. But you can't allow Barca to beat you on the breaks, where they have speed with guys like Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, who in my opinion is the best player in the world at the moment. I know people will say Salah, but Rafinha has been on a different level this season. Even guys like Ferran Torres, who he's played 33 matches. None of them, he hasn't started many of them, but he has 16 goals in 33 matches, and he leads in the statistics of goals per minute. He has the highest margin in goals per minute. So he's really come on for Barca, and it's been great because Barca needs to refresh their top, especially with guys like Lewandowski being our number 9, who's been superb, of course. Lewandowski is number 4 in UCL scoring, and he leads La Liga scoring. So it's not like we need to replace Lewandowski, but it's nice to have someone behind Lewandowski, like Ferran Torres, scoring 16 goals in 33 games, doesn't start most of the matches. So yeah, Borussia is really going to have to be disciplined in the back and find a way to shut those guys down, man. Lamin's been at another level. Best youth player I've ever seen in my life. I know there's been a lot of starlets that have like tried to make it out of Barca, or big teams, but I think Lamin is just a different breed. He really is the next coming of the greatest. I'm not going to say the greatest player of all time, but he is going to be one of the greatest ever, in my opinion, if he continues the trajectory he's in. And Lord forgive, any injuries to him. So, yeah, 17 years old, and he's capable of changing a game like that. So, Borussia's really going to have to stay solid in the back. Discipline. Now, Barca also relies a lot on rotation, like I mentioned before. They have a lot of guys in the midfield with Gavi, Pedri, Frenkie de Jong. Even guys like Marc Casado have been getting nods, and we got Fermin Lopez as well. So, yeah, if Barca's starting 11 is not in top form, you don't have to worry, because we got guys coming off the bench who are going to be ready to go, and they're hungry. Like I mentioned before with Ferran, like he's really been hungry for goals and to showcase that he belongs on this team and probably deserves a starting 11 spot. Just where do you start him? Like, you're not benching Lewandowski, not the whole season at least. The cup games, yeah, you can switch him in and out. He can't fit in the wings. I mean, Rafinha and Lamine, they can't stay on the bench in important games. So, tough for Ferran Torres, in my opinion, but great problem for Barca to have. In terms of head-to-head for these two clubs, they've faced each other in the group stage this season in the UCL. Barcelona winning 3-2 away. A really good game. Borussia did lead that game. Barca had to come back twice. I believe Rafinha scored the game winner in the 85th minute, but a great game. So maybe all you neutral fans are hoping for a similar game like that, a very high-scoring game. But and then they played twice in the 2019 group stages. Back then, when you were in a group of 4 and you would play the team twice, home and away. First game ended in a 0-0 draw at Borussia, and then Barcelona with Messi, of course, still securing a 3-1 victory at the Camp Nou. So Barcelona have never lost to Borussia in the UCL, and I don't think it's going to happen this season either. So for Barca, I mean, they just have to remain focused. Really, they have a lot of different tournaments coming up for them, and they've played a lot of games in a very short time frame. So you have to wonder if that's going to eventually catch up to them. But like I said, Flick emphasizes rotation, and Barca has the players to rotate. So it's still something to look for in terms of Borussia finding a way to take advantage of Barcelona. They're going to be on tired legs because they've played a lot of different competitions, and they still have a lot of games to look forward to, very important games coming up, with the final for the Copa del Rey coming up, the second leg of the UCL, and then they still have to very much win out in the La Liga to win the league. So that's something to look forward. But for Borussia, I think for them it's going to be just if they can play with heart and draw inspiration from their fans. I think they have to look for inspiration from their fans and from their historical shortcomings in order to find some sort of style of gameplay where they're able to upend Barcelona's great defense, who is not only great at defending, but they get up with their attack as well. Balde and Koundé are probably the most attack-minded fullbacks I've seen in a long time for any team, outside of like Kyle Walker for City, who I think is a very attack-minded player, and even Alexander-Arnold, who is very attack-minded. But in terms of Barca, they've not really haven't had a player like that since Jordi Alba left, and now they have 2 guys. So Borussia's really gonna have to find a way to, calm the waters in that terms of Barca's attack. But yeah, they're gonna have to find some they're gonna have to dig deep in their hearts and play their butts out in order to even make this tie close. I don't think it'll be close. I think Barca's going to ease to the semifinals, and that's not even coming off just a biased standpoint. As a Barcelona fan, I think if you ask anyone, Barcelona should cruise to the semifinals. If you look at the stats of what Barca has done this season, you look at the stats of what Borussia is doing this season. I mean, we're pitting first place in probably the top 3 leagues in Europe against 8th place and a top 3 league in Europe. So, can you really say anything less? Barcelona should cruise here, and they'll probably win both games. They'll win at the Signo Iduna, and they'll win at Camp Nou, or what do they call it? The Olympiaco, where they play now. So, Barca's cruising to the semifinals here. Sorry, Borussia Dortmund fans. Sorry, Barca haters. Sorry, Real Madrid, Barca hate watchers. Barca's cruising to the semifinals. Done deal. Now, this last game, for me, and maybe for other people, the most exciting game in terms of just how different it is compared to the rest of these games. Different in the sense that both these teams have never played each other before in any competition, so no head-to-head history here whatsoever, and just two teams that are on different spectrums of success, but for different reasons, and different spectrums of ambition. As well. Aston Villa versus PSG. Great game. On paper, it doesn't look like the greatest game of all time. It doesn't look like the greatest tie of all time, but name-wise, on paper. But if you look at what these teams have done, you'll start to realize, like, this is going to be the most exciting game. Aston Villa, to me, has been the most informed Prem team this season and since 2025, to me. From what I've seen from Aston Villa, they are doing something that they haven't done in a while. First of all, this is a historical season for them. They're in the Champions League. They're battling for top 4 UCL qualification spot again in the Prem. They're coming off a 3-1 victory against Nottingham this weekend. Don't forget, Nottingham is 3rd place, and they're having their best season in forever. So, that's good. And like I mentioned, they're 6th place, only 1 point off UCL qualification. Unai Emery has his team flying on all cylinders. It's unbelievable what they've done this season. They're one of the most exciting teams I've seen and one of the most informed teams. On the other side, PSG, man, like, they're coming off a league clinching win, something that's not surprising at all, and in my opinion, not impressive. It's League One. A lot of people call it Farmers League, me included, Farmers League, but they've won 4 out of the last 5. Not surprising here. They clinched pretty early. Not surprising against. I mean, who are they competing against, really? No one. Okay, so that was kind of expected. But I think their most notable moment this season has been knocking out Premier League leaders Liverpool. When I saw that draw, I was like, okay, it's going to be a great game, exciting. 2 attack-minded teams, 2 teams that attack you directly, direct style of gameplay. Somehow complete opposite. There's 2 games across 2 games. 2 goals across 2 games. And, I mean, PSG won on penalty shootouts. They knocked out Liverpool, though. And I think they really showcased what they could do in terms of how they played tactically against Liverpool. Shutting down Liverpool, first of all, is no easy goal, or nothing easy to come by to shut down Liverpool. Liverpool, to me, was the best team in the world in that moment. Not anymore. After losing to PSG, and they kind of really faltered off after that. They've slowed down. I think that really hit them more morally. I think that really hit them in terms of morale very hard. But nonetheless, I regress on Liverpool. We're not talking about Liverpool here. We're talking about PSG and what they've really done. PSG has become a tactical masterpiece under Luis Enrique. One of the youngest teams in the UCL, and what they do on the ball is just amazing to say. They really take control of possession, and they dictate their style of play into the game. I think they're overall balanced, and they have an attack that flares up like no other. They have guys like Barcola on one wing and Ousmane Dembele on the other, who's really been flying for PSG down the wings and just in general this season. Dembele has 7 UCL goals and 21 in the league, and he's really come on towards the latter end of the league, or sorry, the season for PSG, and he's been scoring a lot of important goals for them. So I think you really have to look at Dembele here, but just in general, PSG under Luis Enrique is completely transformed tactically. Aston Villa, on the other end, they're very solid in the back. I think that's been one of the reasons why they've been able to contend in the UCL and even in the Prem, why they're battling for top 4 spots in the Prem, why they're battling to get into the semifinals in the UCL. Besides that, I think they have lethal counterattacks with guys like Marcus Rashford, who they signed in the December window, and guys like Asensio, who's had a resurgence for in terms of career at Villa. So I think that's really great for both of those. 2 great guys on the ball, speedy, they can create, and then they have a guy on top who complements them really well, and Ollie Watkins. I think Ollie Watkins is one of the better strikers in England. I know he gets overlooked because we have guys like Haaland, guys like Mo Salah, Jota, guys that are playing in the Prem, but Ollie Watkins, I think he's a very solid player, and those 3 players are going to be pivotal in breaking PSG's defensive line. Sorry, that was a ramble right there. As I mentioned before, these teams have never faced each other, so we really have no historical background on either of these teams and how they faced off each other, and I think that's why this tie is very exciting. Like I said, these 2 teams are like ambitious, but on different spectrums of what ambition is. I mean, Villa are looking for their first title in all competitions since 1997, and Emery is a coach who knows how to win competitions. I mean, he's won 4 Europa Leagues, 3 with Sevilla and 1 with Villarreal, and he didn't just beat any teams. I know Europa League is below the UCL, but it's still a European competition, and he still played top competition, especially with Villarreal. I mean, they beat Manchester United that season, so I know Manchester United is not the top of the table anymore, top of the crop for football, but nonetheless, they're still a very historic team. So I think Emery has done a very great job with Villa, and what he needs to do is make sure his team is disciplined and versatile in order to be able to knock off PSG. As I mentioned before, PSG has been transformed this season under Luis Enrique. They've really surprised me in terms of like cohesion and versatility as a team. Before, when they had Mbappe, Neymar, Messi, we all knew it was Mbappe, Messi, Neymar who were going to, try to dictate the game, and there wasn't really any cohesion there. But now they do have that cohesion, and they're playing way better than I could have ever imagined, especially after watching that Liverpool tie. They really dominated Liverpool, and they really showcase what they can do when they hold possession, really attack you as a team, and even their counterattacks are lethal with guys on the wings that they have. So yeah, it's gonna be a very interesting tie. Villa do have the home field advantage going into the first leg, and I think their current form, you can say that they can compete and beat anyone right now, and I do agree with that. I do think that they can beat and compete with anyone at any level in any league. But PSG is a veteran, and they're looking for UCL glory after they almost came close in 2020 when they lost to Bayern. And on paper, in the sports book, they're going to be favorites still. But you can't overlook Villa's form and ambition here. I really think people are overlooking Aston Villa here. And I get it. I get why. PSG just knocked off Liverpool kind of with ease, honestly. If it wasn't for just them going to penalties, and if PSG would have put all those chances they had in the back of the net, they really would have dominated Liverpool on paper in terms of the scoreline. But yeah, I mean, this is a matchup of European brilliance being contrasted by ambition. European brilliance being PSG, who wins their league pretty much yearly, and then ambition and Villa, who are having their best seasons by far, coached by a manager who knows how to win titles. So to me, this is the most exciting and the hardest matchup to diagnose in terms of who's going to win, why they're going to win, what's the scoreline going to be. 2 teams that are in great form, but with different history on their side. And I really do think Villa has to make the first leg count. They have to find a way to win at Villa Park. Yeah, Villa Park. They really have to find a way to win at Villa Park if they want any chance of beating PSG here. I'm going to go out on a whim and call this prediction. This is the one game that I didn't want to predict just because I don't know what to expect, and I could be very, very wrong. I'm a guy who really loves the underdog story. I love the Cinderellas. I love the underdogs. I love the story. Anything with a story behind it, I get behind. And Villa's story this season is something different. They're 2 games away from their first title since 1997, being in the FA Cup semifinal. And they have a chance to knock off a very, very successful team. Domestically, of course, not European, in PSG, a team that is better than them on paper, and a team that a lot of people are going to say is better than them on paper. I'm going to go out and say that Villa finds a way and they progress in this tie. That's just me. Sure, all the sports books are still going to have PSG and completely warranted. And if PSG wins, that's fine. Not surprising at all. Like, it would be more surprising if Villa won, but I do want Villa to win, and I think they have the possibility to win because of everything we talked about. But yeah, one of the most exciting ties. I hope it's a great tie, like it's shaping up to be. I hope you guys are able to catch all the games this week and next week, of course. And let me know in the comments what you guys think about these 4 matches and what you guys think about what I said. If you guys agree with my takes, if you guys disagree, I want to get to know what you guys think, and that's most importantly why I've been making this podcast. So I hope you guys enjoyed the first episode of the podcast. I know I probably rambled a lot, and I tried to stay on script with what I have written down, but being that it's just my first podcast ever, my first YouTube video ever, I'm just looking to improve week by week. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. I really do. I enjoy talking to you guys. I enjoy rambling about soccer, and it's just something that I'm very passionate about. Go out there and enjoy these games. Honestly, 4 great matches. We'll see what happens, and we'll talk about the results, and we'll preview the second leg in the next video. So thank you guys for tuning in to episode 1 of the Toque de Fútbol podcast, and I'll catch you guys next week with episode 2. Love you guys. Stay safe. Peace out.